This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 488 of the Yellow Wall Pod. I'm your Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund starting back into the Bundesliga after the international break against Heidenheim. We will also preview, as good as we can, the Wednesday start to the Champions League against FC Brügge. And we will obviously talk a little bit about the testimonial game, Tschüssikowski, how they called it, that happened during the weekend. For all that and more, joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing? Nice to talk to you.
Hello Stefan, I'm a bit tired, but that's to be expected when we are recording these, so I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, doing well myself. Before we talk about the serious stuff, maybe real quick, let's talk about the testimonial with a lot of former Dortmund legends around. Obviously, Jürgen Klopp made an appearance at the sideline. Mats Hummels got a quick moment to say farewell himself. Overall, to me, it was a very nice game. I got teary-eyed a couple of times seeing a couple of old Dortmund legends chop it up. How did you see it? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. Usually, I mean, for example, the Weidenfeller game, I think that was like 2 years ago, or was that pre-pandemic? I don't even recall. Anyway,
I was like, there was a Weidenfeller game.
Yeah, there was.
So much from my recollection.
And Klopp already came back for that, which is why, all the hoopla about it this time. But I guess it was because he was also on the training pitch and did a bit more media stuff. But the Weidenfeller game, yeah, that was the typical testimonial. I think there was a bit of a different vibe to this one. Maybe because it's two players. Maybe it's because Piszczek and Wojciechowski are special characters in that part of Dortmund's history or whatever. But I enjoyed it immensely. Had a real, obviously a nostalgic vibe to it, but also if you follow the stuff Dortmund put out on YouTube and all that, it's kind of like a high school reunion almost. And I mean, regular listeners might be able to tell that I'm not necessarily a sentimental person, but when it comes to football, I can get quite nostalgic. And obviously, I mean, starting with the farewell for Mats Hummels, that was quite emotional. Also, just because it's so recent still. And then, seeing some of those guys that you haven't really taken notice of for maybe a decade or more, that was all very nice. Game itself, didn't really care. I think it would have been nice if they had the penalty shootout, which I think was planned for, had there been a draw at the end. So, but I almost like it that they didn't manufacture that, as they probably would have in some of these other games. Going back to the Weidenfeller game for 1 second again, I think at some stage he left goal because he wanted to score himself and all that. That's the kind of stuff which I don't necessarily think too highly of. And if I'm paying...
things go off the rail when the referee starts playing in the game.
Yeah. Well,
that didn't happen this time.
If I'm paying, I don't know how much they charged for a ticket here, but it was fully packed with over 80,000 people. So if I'm paying for that ticket, I want to have fun and all that, but at the end of the day, I also want to see a bit of football. So it was nice to see that some of those older guys still have it. So all in all, there are much worse ways, I would say, to spend a Saturday afternoon during the international break when not much else is going on.
Yep, I would agree. It was really nice to see a lot of our players. I thought the halftime game with 100 kids with us, what was it, Shai and Piszczek in Kuba, was fun. Even though I wish they tried a little harder. I mean, I've seen these versions. I think in Japan sometimes. I know Shinji Kagawa did one and they actually won by shooting the ball high in the air and then heading it toward goal, etc., etc. They took it a bit more seriously, but that was all good fun. I really enjoyed it, and as you said, I too got very nostalgic. I think me just seeing Neven Subotic and Mats Hummels just standing side by side already got me very, very teared up for whatever reason, a little choked up. And I also was surprised to see how well, it's funny how good these players really are. You see then, even if they have lost their stamina, but the technical ability still looked very impressive. Mo Zidane, for example, thought he had some really amazing touches and moments on the ball, but obviously you can see he is far, far away from his prime, not even in footballing shape whatsoever. And was good to see. Lucas Barrios, at least in that game, looked like he could be helpful for Dortmund right now. But kidding aside, obviously, you stand out against the Patrick Ovoilas of the world in that game. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. But before we talk too much about it, and I get even more nostalgic. Already the Jürgen Klopp from the training ground, that image already got me. But anyway, let's talk about Heidenheim, Lars. Deep cut. They are currently, after 2 match days, leading the Bundesliga table. They are, of course, already in a bit more of a form because they've also played in the UEFA Conference League playoffs, I think it was, right? And did quite well there because they have now obviously qualified for that European competition. And they are a team which, due to some, I guess, continuity on several positions and the way they seem to me look like a team, they have their shit together, for what it's worth. And Dortmund, at least from that Bremen performance, don't quite look like that. So considering that the DFL is screwing us over again with a Friday game after an international break, what can we expect from that game in 2 days?
I think Heidenheim are one of those teams that are never easy to play against, because they were set up. Obviously, they have the longest serving head coach in Bundesliga history, or in clubs that are in the Bundesliga's history, because obviously most of the time they spent in lower tiers. In Frank Schmidt, who has written an actual fairy tale of a footballing story, because it's not one of those situations where a big company from a certain region has pushed a club beyond its natural limits, but rather they have grown somewhat organically over the years, spent a lot of time in the second division. And then at some point they just became too good to not get promoted. And obviously last season was their first in the Bundesliga, did very well there. To make it into the Conference League, obviously with a bit of an assist from the likes of Dortmund, because German teams did so well in the Champions League first and foremost. Dortmund, the Bundesliga got that extra spot, which obviously trickled down. So I think a lot of people probably looked at Heidenheim possibly as one of those clubs that for whom it might be detrimental to play in Europe, because obviously they aren't used to that sort of dance on 3 weddings. Is that what the Germans say?
Yes.
Sort of playing in 3 competitions. They've lost a number of important players. Tim Kleindienst, who apparently is going to be called up for Germany soon, went to Gladbach. Who's the other guy I'm missing? I'm blanking on. Niklas Beste, the former Dortmund player, went to Benfica, so he's playing Champions League football now.
Horrible beard.
Yeah, and a couple more, but they've done really well on the transfer market. They got Paul Wanner from Bayern on loan, who's probably the best 18-year-old in the Bundesliga right now. They got the best player from the 3rd division in Leo Schenzer, I think is how you would pronounce his name. So yeah, if the game goes even in the slightest way, the same way as last season's meeting on the third match day goes, I'm going to pull out a lot of my hair, because that was a very annoying game. Dortmund being up by 2 goals despite playing pretty horribly, I would say, from memory at least. Then Ilham Dinkci got a brace, if I'm not mistaken, for Heidenheim. And then the final 20-odd minutes or so were absolutely ridiculous, like clown show football, up and down, nobody defending, everybody was completely tired. And I think Felix Metscher had like more or less a sitter to win the game at the death or close to it, and was blocked or missed a shot or whatever. So I only remember being incredibly annoyed by this game. The saving grace, I suppose, for myself is that I'm going to be sitting in an Irish pub for this game with a couple of friends, so I'm not necessarily going to spend too much time worrying about the football.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I don't know. I honestly, I can't tell you one way or another whether Dortmund are going to win this game or not, because of the way Heidenheim is, and Dortmund obviously have a way to go. I mean, first of all, mini rant. I absolutely hate that Dortmund have to play the Friday games after international breaks. I think it's something that's just atrocious on top of the already full schedule for load management and all the international players that Dortmund have. It's really not great. Now, obviously, Gio Reyna did pick up a groin injury, and today at the news conference, Nuri Sahin said that he will be out for several weeks. Said that Gio Reyna was relatively sad because he was sort of having the feeling that he is getting closer to the team again and playing time, and that obviously derails that. But if all things went normally, let's say, then Jan Couto, who was with Brazil, and Gio Reyna, who was with the United States men's national team, they might have only arrived on Thursday or maybe even later, depending on how things go, and then obviously you miss the final team training and such. We've all had it before. I think that's a massive disadvantage. I think Nuri Sahin also noted that Heidenheim had 0 international guys, or 0 guys on international duty, and could prepare for this game, rest up, etc. So Dortmund's one advantage that they have is at least that they don't have to travel to Heidenheim but play at home. But yeah, obviously the expectation for Dortmund is going to be very high in this game from the Dortmund fans, and I don't know if they will be able to really dazzle, because Heidenheim is not a team that allows you to dazzle normally. But what I will say, I only watched the first half of the home leg against Heidenheim last season because I had to work in the second half, and when I started work, I was relatively comfortable thinking that Dortmund would easily win this, because the first half looked decent, it wasn't atrocious. Dortmund looked good, looked dominant, and this game must have completely slipped out of their hands. But obviously I have no recollection of that because I didn't see it. What I will say about this game coming up now is that I am very much intrigued about Serhou Guirassy and whether he will immediately start or whether Nuri Sahin will only bring him off the bench. From what we hear in the news conferences, that Guirassy is in good shape. Apparently has trained since sort of the Frankfurt game, and I think he said now the handbrake is off. Sort of the mental handbrake after an injury that you sometimes have in your mind, slowing yourself down because you don't want to re-injure yourself. And he, quote Sahin said, looks like a star player is supposed to look. So I think that's definitely a positive. Jan Couto also has been able to train and is expected to play in some capacity. We've already discussed on the last episode that Nico Schlotterbeck is suspended. So yeah. So the question is, you've obviously seen the Bremen game and you saw that Dortmund's attacking output was, I don't even want to say mediocre because that would already be too good. It was horrific, it was bad, and it looked not very well rounded. So now with the injection of Guirassy, what do you expect? What do you hope to see in the Heidenheim game and then more going forward?
I don't know if it's necessarily only about Guirassy.
Probably isn't.
I mean, we've talked a bit about that setup, which in which all three center halves are playing, and my theory was that maybe Schein didn't want to have to make a difficult decision. Well, Schlotterbeck made it for him with a stupid foul, which you guys, I guess, talked about. So
we did. There were a few F-bombs in the last episode.
I'm kind of expecting Bensebaini to play because Schein was very vocal in his praise in the press conference, and Bensebaini played quite a bit for Algeria during the international break, so he should be in decent nick. The problem is that he's only returning on Thursday apparently, which is what I read like 5 minutes before we started recording the show. So I can't verify it necessarily, but I mean, it's not like in these 2 or 3 training sessions they are doing something completely out of the ordinary that would make anybody who misses them, have a disadvantage or whatever. So I'm presuming that will work. So they won't have 3 center halves standing around in, similar areas. So might be a difference there. I actually think the most important, change they might make over the next few weeks might be Couto or Couto. I'm still unsure. Because
someone said he is in the YouTube comment said he's pronounced like Coutinho.
Okay.
So like young Couto, I guess. I don't know.
I don't think it's hugely important for us to know his name by now because he obviously hasn't been able to show much. But whenever he's ready to play meaningful numbers or meaningful minutes, I think Dortmund's attacking plan will change quite a bit because obviously he's much more of a creative outlet on the wing than Riazon and Bensebaini or Schlotterbeck. So I think that might be a change. But that's probably more of a medium term, the next 3-4 weeks till the next international break where everybody's gone and Dortmund once again play on Friday evening.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't even want to rant about it, but it's just I hate it.
Yeah, I've especially because as you said in the introduction, when Dortmund are playing in the Champions League on Wednesday, why are they playing on Friday? That makes no sense. Make the team that plays on Tuesday play that. We have 5 German teams in the Champions League, so I'm assuming 2 of them or 3 of them are going to play on Tuesday, so one of them could have played this Friday. But nevertheless, if it's the change Guirassy for Bayer, maybe during the game or even starting the game, I think you will see a difference just by the way of how they interpret the position. You can play Bayer up front, but you can't play him, like a proper number 9. He's not, big, strong, physical, likes to play with the back to his goal. I mean, you need to release Bayer, let him make his runs, let him run off the shoulder and all that good stuff, which he's very good at. And they kind of, at Bremen, they hoofed long balls to him. They made him go into aerial duels. That's just not his game. So, Guirassy, while he's also not, that classic target man, fox in the box kind of guy, he's obviously a bit more robust in his physicality. So I'm assuming that he can, go into those infights with Patrick Meinka of Heidenheim, who's, former Dortmund under 23 player, quite physical as a center half and all that good stuff. But yeah, I think it's too easy to expect Guirassy to solve all their problems. But then again, they obviously had a plan when they signed him because they believed at that point that he would come in and they would still have Niklas Füllkrug, so 2 out-and-out number 9s. So I'm guessing they have a plan for, how to integrate Guirassy at best. And I think that is something to look forward to because obviously Guirassy was really, really good for Stuttgart last season. But I think we talked about this in the summer. When you look at, a bit more of the underlying numbers, he's actually been a very good player for a longer time. So might be able to fill the role up front for Dortmund, which hasn't really been filled successfully since Erling Haaland has left.
Yeah. He also, I think today it was announced, switched his numbers since Alea's exit. Now he's number 9. So if you bought yourself a Guirassy shirt, and when I was in Dortmund, I actually saw a couple of people who had Guirassy with the number 19 on their back. Dortmund will swap it for you. So it's some organizational nonsense you have to go through, I assume. But I certainly, if I had a Guirassy shirt, I would want the 9 on the back. So yeah. I'm really excited. Obviously, could be a transfer that really elevates Dortmund quite a bit. I'm just intrigued and excited to see how it pans out. Yeah, it's nice to have a number 9, and I hope he is already fit enough to start. But obviously, I also don't want Dortmund to be reckless about it, since I assume, because of how thin that position now is, the risk of overplaying him is definitely there. Well, I talked about it in the last episode. I wanted against Bremen, I would have probably dropped Emre Can and played a 4-1-4-1 system, so we actually have a couple more wingers, because the whole Sabitzer Brandt double 10 but no real right winger thing doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Maybe it makes more sense if you have actually Couto on the right side, because of his forward momentum that Riasson most certainly don't have. Lineup and shape wise, Lars, you've already talked about the backline probably being a bit more traditional with Ben Sebaini as a left back slotting in. Do you think we will see, or maybe should see, a different system, maybe different lineup in midfield? And if I recall correctly, you wrote about Duranville on football.news, and obviously his exploits for the Belgian national team. I think everyone has seen the viral videos of him dribbling through France's backline. How do you approach that subject? Do you think it would be better for the Black and Yellows to have 2, let's say, out and out wingers on their wings?
I mean, the problem is that by now the thing is that Gittens always does well when he comes off the bench, and then he gets a chance to start and basically lays an egg, and that's been a recurring theme for a few months now, let's say. Now, how the international break factors into all that, I don't know. Obviously, Duranville got his first 2 appearances for Belgium. I wouldn't necessarily overrate them because he came off the bench. Belgium lost against France. Obviously, he had that one fun to watch dribble, but I don't want to assume anything that he did too much more than that. I think the other game against Israel, not a particularly competitive opponent, so I would be amazed if Duranville starts, just because you don't go from zero to starting, especially after international break when you haven't been able to show anything in practice. So and you could also say that Adeyemi, by scoring 5 goals in 2 games for Germany's under 21, has gained so much confidence that maybe he should start. And I would hope that he's never again put up front, because that's just not something he's particularly good at least, as a singular striker. So maybe the wings are going to be Adeyemi and Gittens. Maybe it's Adeyemi and Sabitzer, which I also don't really love. But as you said, maybe I kind of assume once Couto is up to snuff and able to play meaningful minutes, then I'm kind of assuming that Couto is going to be their de facto right winger, and Sabitzer can drift more into central roles. But if that's whether that's against Heidenheim, I think it's kind of difficult to say all these things because even Shine himself kind of said today, hey, this was my first international break. And he also said that he's basically at the mercy of, the athletic staff when it comes to how they want to manage load and all that. So I wouldn't be shocked if the starting 11 looked a bit strange from the get-go. And I also wouldn't be shocked if it's just the same minus Schlotterbeck plus Ben Sebaini that we've seen in Bremen. So what I'm actually somewhat curious about is whether they would not play Ben Sebaini because, as I said earlier, he might be, a bit too late for that, and whether they would then try putting Can in central defense, which would kind of solve the problem of having a double pivot which occupies the same spaces and Can taking the ball away from Groß because he wants to show he can, be a part in build-up and all that. So that would be almost the most interesting to me because then you would have Groß presumably playing defensive midfielder alone. Maybe Sabitzer drops a bit deeper and then you would have the ability to actually play two wingers. So that might be an option, but then I don't know that they have the ideal solution for that Schlotterbeck role because obviously neither Can nor Anton nor Süle are left-footed, and that might be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I don't know. Would you play Rios on there? But then you would play two normal center backs, I guess, if Kotu can start. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's a bit difficult right now. I think taking Emre Can out of the equation would solve a couple of problems, but maybe I'm wrong about that too. But I feel like Pascal Groß as a single pivot is giving him a lot of responsibility, and obviously Sabitzer has the qualities to drop down a little bit too. But yeah, I honestly don't know how this structure, the way it was against Bremen, if we see it similarly against Heidenheim, how this is going to work either. So maybe they'll just figure something out. But this is just going to be likelier than not a game that's horrible to watch, where Dortmund have a lot of problems because they barely had any time on a training ground together during this international break, and hopefully they can take advantage of their increased set piece skill, because I think that is something they will definitely need to maybe have a can opener, or it's going to be like in a Frankfurt game where in the end it's just pure individual skill that decides the game, whether it be Jamie Gittens or Duranville or whoever else. But I think right now we can't really expect like dazzling combination football. But yeah, we'll see. On Wednesday, as we already said, Dortmund will start their Champions League campaign. A slate of 8 games. FC Brügge is the first game, and like I said before, they are playing in Brügge. So starting with an away game, Dortmund in the Champions League, I think last season were pretty okay on the road.
Except for the first game at PSG, which was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Except for the first, but I think they made up for it by actually winning the other semifinal in Paris, right? So I think that's pretty good. Anyway, Lars, I've talked about it to Matthias on the last episode. Do you think that Dortmund will qualify outright, will manage to qualify for the round of 16 via the one playoff game, or not at all?
Is it one playoff game? Is it a playoff round?
I think it's a playoff round.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, that would be quite harsh to have home field advantage in that. I mean, to be honest, when the schedule came out, I was surprised that 2 of those games were after the turn of the year, because for whatever reason, I had it all in my head that it was going to be the 2 additional games before the winter break, if there's one. And that was kind of how my entire view of this new format was, solidified, which obviously then is more about, even more games for the players and so many international players. When will they ever get a break and all that? But now that 2 of those games are actually in January, I don't really mind the new format from what I can tell. But at this point, obviously, they haven't played it yet, but kind of seems like there are more fixtures that look interesting on paper. Obviously, we have to wait and see. Maybe it's a complete dud, and those 2 January games are all but irrelevant for 20 of the teams in the competition. Having said that, it's the 8 first place teams, as it were, are going through directly, right?
Yes.
So the question is basically, do I think are Dortmund among the best 8 teams in the Champions League? Give or take, obviously, results being a bit wonky sometimes. I don't think Dortmund are among the top 8 sides in the Champions League generally. Now, I haven't looked at every team's schedule, so there might be 1 or 2 clubs that I would rank above them that have particularly difficult roads to first place finish, or a top 8 finish rather. But I think it would be more likely for Dortmund to end up in the knockout round. What I will say is I think it's borderline impossible for a size of Dortmund's club to get eliminated after the league stage, because there are quite a few of the smaller sides in the Champions League now, which I guess is part of why they did why they added teams, because they wanted to make sure that it's even more of a closed shop, so the best sides stay in the competition longer, get more money and all that. But from a Dortmund perspective, I think they are probably profiteering from that, because, as I said, I think I'd be pretty hard pressed to come up with a, somewhat realistic, path to them getting eliminated outright after the first 8 games. I just don't see how that is, somewhat likely. I don't know.
All right. Well, do you have anything to say about Wednesday's opponent? Because I come to realize I really have precious little to say about FC Brügge. I mean, Dortmund did play against them a few years ago, but obviously I assume it's much more of a different team by now. I honestly have no idea what their playing style is and how they approach the Champions League, because it's so often that you look at teams and how they play in the league, and then obviously the Champions League anthem plays, and these teams play an entirely different style, especially if they are dominant in the league, but then in the Champions League have a more of an underdog role. So yeah, FC Brügge might actually fall into that category. I don't know how their league season how they really played so far in the league. Do you have any insights at all? Because we must be honest here if we don't.
I mean, despite being a religious watcher of, is it still Jupiler League? I could not. I assure you that I haven't seen a single minute of FC Brügge football since the last time they played against Dortmund. Before we hit the record button, we both looked at the squads, I think, and realized that we know like this one player and there's another guy. So I don't know. I mean, Simon Millionaire in goal. I don't know if he's a first choice goalkeeper, but he's under contract, so that's one. Hans van Aken was already there when they played Dortmund last time, and they also signed Zolis from Düsseldorf last season, who was one of the best players in the second division. So I think it's kind of, as you said, it's almost pointless to look at these, with all due respect, smaller sides from, not the most competitive of leagues and assume that, because they're, playing amazing attacking football in Belgium, that doesn't mean that they are going to wipe the floor with Dortmund at home. So I think it's best if we look at this from a Dortmund perspective, and I think what we can say about them is over the last few years they've actually been pretty good at avoiding, the slip-ups against smaller teams in the Champions League. Off the top of my head, I don't really recall the last time they had a shocking result against one of these smaller sides. I mean, they they did well enough against Copenhagen, for example, which comes to mind last year. There wasn't really a small team in the group of death, as it was called. So, as I said, I don't really remember when the last game in the Champions League was where they completely laid an egg against an opponent which they should have beaten comprehensively. So, I'm sort of assuming more of the same.
Yeah, that's why I'm assuming too. Now, like I said before, I think not having Mats Hummels around will probably hurt them quite a bit. I also don't know if Terzic ball is, from a playing style, helpful to be a bit more effective in the Champions League. But do you think that this squad and this team can replicate, let's say, the mature approach that Dortmund have shown over the last years in the Champions League? Because I think this is something that I have found to appreciate. Like you just said, they haven't really laid too many eggs. I think part of it is because they have really figured out how to play Champions League football. Do you think knowing sort of the solutions to that problem, if you will, is still around, or do you think that maybe with a young new coach and Nuri Sahin, this may go away a little bit?
I mean, it's more of a general discussion, I think, because they wouldn't play Terzic's underdog football against Brügge. They didn't last year or in the last couple of seasons against smaller sides in the Champions League. There's still a lot of institutional knowledge because a lot of these players have been around for a bit of time now, and obviously Sahin was Terzic's assistant coach, so it's not like he took all the secrets with him when he brought a cardboard box, which is what I'm assuming happens when a coach leaves. I don't know. I think the ideas that Sahin has, and obviously he's played in the competition, which I'm assuming is somewhat important or helpful or whatever. The ideas he's installing at Dortmund, to me, that's all about control and having the ball and being dominant, and that should suit them against the likes of Brügge and some of these other easier, as it were, fixtures in the Champions League stage. But then the question is, and I don't know that anyone has the answer, will they be able to flip the switch when they are at Real Madrid? I don't even have it in front of me whom else they are playing in the group in the league stage, where the Terzic approach would be the way to go. But
maybe Barcelona, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's at Dortmund, right?
Yeah, that's a home game.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, ultimately we all don't know. But I would assume that there's enough institutional knowledge and just reasoning to play whichever way suits them best in the particular instance. So I don't think they are going to go to the Santiago Bernabeu and play, trying to dominate Real Madrid in possession, because that's not going to work.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued how this Champions League campaign will go, and about the new format. And in general, I think it's exciting times at Dortmund, even if not everything is going to work out perfectly. There's still been a lot of change, and just having the introduction of Guirassy this match day makes me super excited about Friday. And I'll be honest, even if I hate it, for me personally, I live in the States. It's a nice afternoon time. I don't have to get up at 9:30 in the morning. Although nowadays I am anyway, but still, you know what I mean. And of course, it's a flat game, which is always a special atmosphere. So that's two flat games we now can look forward to. So yeah, there's that. I really hope Dortmund show a better face than they did against Bremen, but it is a home game, so you should expect a little bit more of that, because I still feel like the away form from Dortmund might be always worse than the home form for obvious reasons. So yeah, Lars, I don't really have that many more things to say about this episode. On this episode, if you have any thoughts on your mind, now's the time to say them. If not, until next week.
I'm not going to hold this winning, Stefan.
All right. In that case, talk to you all next week after the Bruges game. Goodbye.